Okay, now let's look at example 2, page 92. Now the question asking find dy dx in terms of x and y if for part A, 5y power 4 plus pi cos y equivalent to 3 square root x. Again, the first thing that you should do, write it down, differentiate with respect to x. For this equation, 5y power 4 plus pi cos y for the left hand side, then your right hand side will be d dx. Alright, now 3. Now I would change the square root x into x to the power of half. Okay, then what you do next is that you differentiate term by term. Okay, now you have two terms, 1, 2. Right, now the first term is simply like the normal differentiation, but this one you differentiate with respect to y. So again, you have to multiply by dy dx at the end of it. So if you multiply this, the first differentiation will give you 20y to the power of 3. Then multiply by, because it's differentiate the y, you have to multiply by dy over by dx. And then for the second term, you differentiate cosine y. Again, differentiate cosine will give you negative sine something lah, your variable. But because your variable here is y, so it will give you negative sine y. Again, what you are doing is you are differentiate in term of y. So the question asking for with respect to x, you have to multiply by dy over by dx. Right? Now, the right hand side, so you will have this with respect to x, and your variable here is x. So you will have 3 multiplied by the power, bring it down, you get half, and then the x. So half minus 1 will give you negative half. Do we need to write dy dx? Question. We don't have to, because you are differentiating with respect to x and your variable is x. So you don't have to multiply by dy dx. Now the next step is you need to make your dy dx as a subject. Now if you look at here, you have two terms, the first term, the second term. These two terms have dy dx. So what you can do, you can factor out your dy dx. Make it your dy dx, factor out. Now, the first term, if you factor out dy dx, you will leave with 20y cubed. Alright, the second term, plus and minus will give you minus. Then you will leave with sine y. Alright, equivalent to nothing more, just write it back. So if you make it nicer, you will have 3 over by, this would be 2. Because you have a negative power, what you can do is reciprocal. So you're going to have a square root of x. Alright, are you settled? Not yet. You still have to make your dy dx as a subject. So you will have dy over by dx. Rearrange is just an algebra. 3 over by 2 square root of x. Because this is a multiplication, if you bring to the other side, it becomes a quotient, which is you divide by the whole thing with 20y cubed minus by sine y. So now you are settled finding your dy dx. Your final answer would be this. Okay? Now let's look at another question. Still example 2 in the page 92 for part B. Right, you are given an equation of y cubed equivalent to sine in a bracket x plus by y. Now, what does it mean by this in a bracket? So, what does it mean? It means that it is a composite function, which is you have an inner function, which is x plus by y. Now, this inner function, if you look at here, it's going to be an implicit differentiation because you have y cubed and inner function of x plus by y. Never mind, let's do it one by one. The first step, what you have to do? Write it back, differentiate your equation y cubed with respect to x. and your right hand side, differentiate sine x plus by y with respect to x. Now the whole thing. Okay, now we have done this a lot of time. If you differentiate y cubed, you're gonna get 3y squared, because you have to differentiate with respect to x, but you are differentiate a y. You have to multiply with dy over by dx. Again, implicit differentiation. Equivalent to now your right hand side. So your right hand side, now the outer function is the sine. What is it that if you differentiate a sine function, you're gonna get a cosine. So cosine, your inner, just write it back first. Cosine x plus by y. So settle, differentiate the outer function. Have you settled differentiate your inner function? No, your inner function is x plus by y. So you have to multiply, differentiate x plus by y. You're going to have the first term, differentiate x will just give you 1. And differentiate y for the second term, this part, you're going to get plus by dy over by dx, correct? Okay, so because what, again, question why it is dy over by dx, you are differentiate a y with respect to x. All right, now don't forget to put your bracket, your big bracket over here. Then what you have to do, simplify, nothing more. Alright, now simplifying, okay, simplifying is that the question want you to find dy dx. So what does it mean by simplifying? Means that your dy dx must be the subject of your solution over here. So what can we do is that, now let's look at the right hand side. What we can see is that you have two terms over here. So what the first thing that you can do, you can multiply. You're going to get cos x plus by y for the first term. The second term, you can multiply. You're going to get plus by cos x plus by y dy over by dx. Alright. Then the left hand side still remain the same thing. Just write it back. Okay. Now, if you look at here, your dy dx has at two sides. So the left hand side and your right hand side. So you can bring over your right hand side to the left hand side. You will get 3y squared dy over by dx. If you have a plus, you're going to get minus by cosine x plus by y dy over by dx. Right? What happened to your cos y? Just write it back. Cos x plus by y. Okay, now you have to factor out your dy dx because you have two terms of dy dx. Factoring this out, you will leave with dy dx. The first term, if you factor out, you're going to get 3y squared. Second term will just leave with cos x plus by y. Close the bracket. Equivalent to, you're still going to have the same cos x plus by y. Okay, now make dy dx as a subject. You will have dy over by dx equivalent to, because this is a product, if you bring to the other side, it will give you a division. So you will have cosine x plus by y over by 3y squared minus by cos x plus by y. Alright, so settle for the part B.